Hi, everybody, and welcome to another edition of UXDX Online. Really excited again for the amazing lineup that we have for you this evening. But before we jump into the talks, which is, I know, the reason why you're here, I want to give a very quick introduction to UXDX and why we run these sessions. So at UXDX, our mission is to help companies shift from building software using waterfall projects to using empowered autonomous product teams. And the reason why that's our mission is because we believe it's a more innovative, more efficient, and more sustainable way of working when you're in a high change environment. So if you're in a low change environment where you might do a project and then everybody moves off to a different part of the business, that makes sense because it doesn't make sense to have a team constantly there. But I've been working in companies where there's hundreds, literally hundreds of projects going on at any given time. So you're constantly, maybe people are moving around, but then some other project comes in. So in that case, it makes sense to have people who really understand the customer and really understand the business needs for that part of the product. And they can really kind of innovate and iterate and figure out the best solution for what the customer needs. Now, the challenge with that is it's nice and easy to say, but it's really hard to do. So it's easy to say, oh, we'll just change how we work. But if anybody has ever tried change management, you know that it's not as easy as just saying that. And that's why we invite people to come and talk about their practices, about how they're trying things and how they're implementing changes in their part of the way of working. Now, hopefully, while they're giving their talks, you're starting to think, how could you apply this in your context? So please do put your questions either in the chat box on the side on uxdx.com or on YouTube, LinkedIn, whichever platform you're watching this on. And we will put those questions to the speakers at the end of their talk. Now, sometimes we can't get through all the questions that come up. So we have the Ask the Speakers channel in the UXDX Slack group. And we'll post any questions we don't have time to get to in there. And we'll invite the speakers to come and answer those questions for you. But that's enough of my introduction. And you're not here to see me. So I'll introduce our first speaker for the evening, who's Anil Kumar Krishnashetty, who will be talking about pair programming is the best usability tool for developer-focused products. So I'd like to welcome Anil.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the introduction. I'm really excited to talk about and share my experience being a technical product manager or a product marketing manager, how I use pair programming to run the user testing, and also sometimes I use it for user research. So I assume I can start. Myself, I'm Anil Kumar. I'm based in Berlin, Germany. I would also like to know, can you just write me in the chat where are you connecting from? If you can write it out on where you're connecting from. Would also like to learn a little bit more about you. Yeah. This is a train station. I want to tell a story about some of the user testing sessions I applied and used in my previous roles, mainly focused on developer-focused products and how it helped me in uncovering the needs and the benefits for the developers-focused products. This is a screenshot from a stop, one of the stop near my home, where during the COVID, there was a good analogy to say what does the 1.5 meter looks like. And it's interesting to see that whatever we assume as a builders, for us, it makes a lot of sense, but it always better to give what is the end user point of view, looking your products, what you build from a end user point of view. If you have empathy, if you see from that angle, you might see things in a different way. What is obvious for us, it's not obvious for end user. It's about uncovering that what is not obvious. Is that's what you're going to get it from the user testing, and that's what you're going to get when you're doing a pair programming with your developer, with your using your product. This is another example. Fundamentally, I want to talk to you about, there's a difference between developer experience and user experience. Developer experience, there is a difference. If you're understanding like, hey, yes, developer experience is also about user experience, but where user is developer, of course, yes, but there is a fundamental difference I want to talk. The difference is most of the principles and tools you have today, which is focused on the UX tools we use for understanding the user behavior. It's more like a restaurant analogy. A developer or a builder who actually looks like works in the kitchen as a chef, but whereas our users are on the table and they're going to have a different experience. Of course, we build the things, the chef prepares the food for the end users. We are talking about the user experience here, whereas a developer experience is more on the context of here in this analogy, it's for makers, it's for builders. The tools they use, the environment they operate is quite different. It's very important to understand that. That's why some of the tools we apply for the user experience and user testing might not be the way you're going to get the exact understanding, what is the pain, what is the underlying need for this maker. And there is also a famous tweet from Sarah. She now works at Google. The developers who are coming to your documentation or to your product, if you don't have a great onboarding experience, they're going to be just leaving you. They're not going to be kind of getting back to you. So it's like a reducing the traffic for your the platform. And another thing you need to think about, looking from an analogy of the kitchen and the table in a restaurant, there is an important difference where developers spend most of their time. They're going to be spending either consuming an API, either consuming a CLI, the command line interface terminal, or an IDE, where they're going to be spending a lot of their time. And also, we need to understand what they do and how they do differently compared to just we apply only the user experience technique, where either it can be a mobile app or a user interface, a web application. There's also a popularity of going AI tools coming. For example, this is from the last year, GitHub CEO talked about there is already a Copilot tool which is generating 40% of code. We need to be also be aware of how this is going to be influencing developers while building applications. And developers also has a lot of tools choice. It's not like they're going to be using only your tool. They might also be considering some alternative tools, some open source tool. They got a lot of choice. They're going to pick one which kind of suits them, which kind of be a great experience, which provides a great developer experience. And again, when I talk about tool choice, like for example, you see here, there are 91 headless CMS available to choose. There's already a lot to choose from. For developers, it is a complex task to decide which one to work on. The one which works really well, obvious, is one which provides a great developer experience. How are you going to provide a great developer experience? By understanding the needs of a developer, by running observing how they use your tool, by solving common pain points, the user pain points. That's how you're going to create a great developer experience. And this is a typical developer experience looks like. A developer comes and gets started with your tool, and they go through docs. They're going to download, they're going to install some of the tools. They're going to find out their use case might not be missed. They might say, hey, this feature is missing, or they might also face that your API or your service might be down, or you might have some deprecation, or you have some other challenges. Like, these are some of the exceptions a developer might face. How are you responding? How are you provide fallback? Understanding those, the whole journey also really helps you. And very important point, while making this tools choice we talked about, even though developers not go and purchase the tool, it's maybe the leadership of developers or make a choice of purchasing, but developers make a huge part in influencing the buying decision, because developers go and try and prototype and POC and see if this fits into their tech stack and if it makes their work efficient. Then they're gonna reference, hey, this is gonna be a huge time saver for us, and I recommend using this tool because it provides a great developer experience, and we would like to work on this tool. So the recommendation of using your tool is higher if you have a great developer experience. And again, when it comes to developer persona, you might think that developer persona is only a one developer, but actually a developer persona can really vary a lot. For example, if you think developer is just a same, it's not. If you look at the distribution of developers, there can be a different developers using different tools to fit to their needs. Also need to consider about what is their tool preferences. And if you're providing, or if you're focusing mainly on JavaScript, then you can talk about the tools which are mostly used by developers, which are JavaScript developers, and what are the ways you can improve their experience. Similarly, think about what is your target users are and what tools they use and how you can enhance the developer experience based on what do they tools they use the most of the time. And for example, if you have seen the React documentation looks not just only advanced user. They talk about React for beginners, React for designers. So there is a multiple ways the journey you can get started. So thinking about multiple journeys for your end users based on their needs, you can create a great developer experience. Another example, which is about Fig, which is providing a more greater developer experience for terminal. Like you don't need to remember the commands; it suggests you auto suggest. This is also another way you can create a Fig command line for your tooling, so that it makes easy to get work done in much quicker way in terminal. This could be one example. Yeah, I want to tell a story about where document improvement at Contentful. I was working as a technical product manager. We were working on a design system called Format 36, and we plan to shift a version from V3 to V4. And as a part of that, I started talking to our community developers and also our customer developers. What are the use cases they are building for? What components are missing? What components we should provide? And what documentation we can provide so that they have a great developer experience. And one thing we noticed while I was performing a pair programming together with our community developer and also our customer developer, I started to see how they're using our design system React components. And also, I was able to see what are the components we don't provide today. For example, one of the common component we didn't provide that time at V3 was pagination. And developers don't wait for things to be available to be built by us. Instead, they're going to create their own or reuse some other library, a component. And I saw that a couple of our customers are reusing some other open source component library, and which gets then their job done, but it's going to create an inconsistent design, inconsistent experience. I wouldn't have known this. I wouldn't have known what are the most commonly used components if I didn't code and see what are the challenges, what are the interface they are trying to create. So while doing a pair programming session, you understand what tools they use, what documentation they refer. For example, we also have Format 36 storybook documentation and also the website for design system component. And I also noticed that experienced designers, experienced developer, front-end developers, they were not coming back to documentation, but they were looking into the TypeScript types as what type of arguments they can pass into the component. So this is also a great learning. Before, we were very much focused on documentation on this website, but we had a little bit less focus on the component types. But understanding that by providing great experience, because developers wanted to spend and work on their IDE, get things much faster, rather than switching the context between the website and to the IDE, they were able to get on time and develop quick things. So it helps us to focus on provide the type system and definitions and documentation on the type system, along with the documentation on the website. Yeah. So the type system is actually kind of a guide or a documentation for developers. So it's very important. So with doing a pair programming, I was able to discover that how experienced developers are using TypeScript types to get auto suggestion and getting things much faster. And here you can see here one example from Commerce Tools where how TypeScript types can really enhance the developer experience for developers. This is a API for e-commerce. So you can already see that what methods I can call, what arguments I can call. So I don't have to go to documentation. I can see staying on the IDE, I'm able to get all the necessary IDs and argument information. That saves a developer time. That's a better developer experience. And there is another angle we can look into from a product or a developer tech team's point of view, a developer efficiency. Think about what are the common tasks which developers are done. Like every day, they're going to be running applications locally, thinking about common tasks, running application, testing it out, putting it in a production or deployment, how fast you can make that, how you can get that into effectiveness faster. The lower effectiveness, that means there is an area for improvement. And imagine developers might be running the applications and trying it out several times. It's going to be multiplied by that time you're consuming that time from developers. So if you can reduce that, if you can create a high effectiveness in your developer workflow, that's going to be a great way to optimize the efficiency of developers. And you can also look from a feedback point of view, same developer effectiveness. And other things which we learned from the pair programming at Contentful with Format 36, with the version V4, we introduced a sandbox. A lot of our customers wanted to try components on the fly quickly. They don't want to use, they want to see how it works and understand if it fits their need. Before, we didn't have this quick code sandbox. They have to create, they have to get the React bootstrapping. It was taking some time for them to bootstrap and work on. With this code box, the code sandbox, they were able to tweak around with the code and try out the component, how it works and what fits there. And they just copy that code component, making it faster to test and validate and copy the code was a huge time saver, making it time to value, reducing the time very quickly. Another example from Chakra UI, inspired by Chakra UI, you can see here that as a developer, I would like to see how it works. And you can get instant feedback. And if it works, and you can just copy that code, and so you don't have to bootstrap it. And we got inspired by this. And also from the pair programming session, we understood that Sometimes developers wanted to just prototype and see if that component fits or not. Yeah, so you might be wondering, okay, this sounds good. Developer user testing and pair programming, I can talk about it, but I have some challenges. How do I do it? How do I make it quickly? If you look at to run such sessions, to understand, to uncover some of your learnings, like if it's really useful or not, your toolings which you're providing for developers, it can be quick. It doesn't have to be a long, lengthy process. The quickest way to find out participants is to start with dogfooding. What I mean by dogfooding is talk to your internal engineers, especially solution engineers, professional service team, developer advocates. They can be your first developers to try with. Like, you can do a pair programming with them, and they know a better context about your customer, and that way you already get a lot of insights. And other way is, if you have your community member, if you have active community member, before inviting them, you can also see how you can help them, like answer them. For example, at my case with Contentful, when I wanted to talk to community members, I looked into our community Slack channel. Instead of just reaching out to them to go and get a user testing session, because it's a big ask, they need to spend like 30 minutes to 45 minutes. Instead of asking them, I first started building a relationship with the community members. Like, I started providing the value. They come with some purpose, they have some challenges. Try to answering them, try to help them first. Then you can express them that, hey, you being a technical product manager responsible for the design system, you wanted to improve the experience not only for community members but all customers. I would like to get an opinion and feedback from you. So usually, if you already help your community member and you build a trust, and they would really happy to help you and provide you more feedback. So this technique really worked well for me. So this is where it's important to constantly provide value to community. And when you need a feedback, or when you need a beta testing, it's very easy to get access to your pool of developers to test. And if you have got some money, like if you have got a budget for your testing, you can also try some recruit participants from freelance platform like Fire, where you can hire an experienced developer and do a pair programming session and see how they run through with your documentation. And that way you can try to get run quickly. And I've seen sometimes, if the product is popular among developers, where they also share it on social media. Other way to automate your getting more developers for testing is, this is my Slack, the Calendly link, where I put 15 minutes for my preparation, 15 minutes for analysis after the session, where I send this Calendly link for a pair programming session. This way, it's automated, like where I can share it with all the potential tech community members, where they can schedule a call, and it's already connected. Calendly is integrated with Zoom, my Zoom session, where I can record the screen and also the pair programming session, so that I can share with my team, so I can create a shared understanding. So yeah, in terms of preparation, it's important to ask some of the fundamental question, like, what are you trying to get it learn from here, from this usability testing session? Or you want to uncover the pain points, or you want to understand the journey where people are dropping off? It's very important to know what you wanted to get out from this testing session, so that it really helps you to analyze if you're some action items from your analysis, or if you want to prove something from your hypothesis. For example, at my current company where I work at Lokalise, one of the things we have was a developer portal called developers.lokalise.com. We were launching the developer portal, we were not sure if the developer portal was a great onboarding experience for developers. So, for example, the developer portal was here, and we were not sure if it's going to be useful for the API endpoints. Were not sure if it's useful, it's intuitive enough. So based on pair programming and user testing, we were able to figure out that for some of developers, it was not obvious how to use this platform. And we created a quick demo video and we put in our landing page or of this REST API endpoint homepage. That's where most of the developers come and see. And if they don't understand, they can quickly see how it is used and how it is done. And this way, we were able to identify the issues, and some of the other issues we were also identify is in terms of experience. Is the ape header is clear? Is our default response is clear? Because sometimes you don't get developers always land here. Sometimes a technical product manager who want to see, understand how is the response looks like. Even though they don't have an API key, they can see how the response looks like. They already get what is the response looks like. And we were able to make a lot more tiny developer experience improvement by just only doing a pair programming and giving them the task and uncovering how easy it is to play around with this platform and improve the developer experience. As a result, we get frequently some really nice codes and feedback from customers that they really like the documentation. They were able to get started quickly. It was only possible with these tiny developer experience improvements, micro improvements, we're able to detect only because of a pair programming session. And there are other types. We also get feedback. We have a feedback form where developers can share a feedback. Time to time, we get a feedback. But most of the time, it was really helpful for us to have a clear what we want to learn and validating our assumption and understanding the behavior of developers and taking actions based on that. Yeah, another thing which you have to keep in mind, just to understand, our goal is to understand the thinking of developers, what's their behavior and why they're making the choice. It's very important to ask open-ended question. If they get stuck, they might ask you, hey, how should I do it? Instead of responding to them, how would you do it if I'm not there? Making them to think aloud, asking them to speak a lot when they're coding can really help you to understand how they approach the problem, where they look for the resources, so that it feels natural. So it doesn't feel like you're testing them. It's testing your developer portal. And another really good benefit about using Zoom, or you can also share screen and also give them the instructions. And you can also use an annotation tool from Zoom where you can point out where the things they have to take care if they really get stuck. So you don't really have to kind of stay ahead, even though you want developers to do what they wanted to do and observe. The other technique which you can also use, and which is done quite popular by many companies, and this is I got from Stripe. They have a very nice technique about documenting everything, documenting when a new developer joins their team, they document all the actions they took while to getting up and running with the Stripe API or Stripe examples, challenges they've gone through. And by looking into those logs, you can also see what are the pain points we have and what are the best way we can improve them. And I took this inspiration, and I also used the new joiners as a participant for pair programming because they're new to the tool, they have not used, so they are developers. So that way, you get a really good feedback because they're not familiar with the platform. And that's also another easy way to get developer feedback and do a pair programming with them for user testing. And another important thing which I notice, it's very important to have sharing observations. My pair programming session, a lot of things I ran alone, and it was fine. I was able to understand a lot of insights, and I was collecting them in Miro board and sharing it to the team. But the problem was it was not clear enough for my team. Again, I had to explain them why this is important, why compared to other opportunities, the other tasks. Uh, it was a double work for me to explain. What I realized is I started inviting my teammates as optional to these user interviews, the user pair programming session, where they were able to observe, but they were not talking, they were not asking questions, but they were turn off their user video and mute audio, and they were observing what the programmer is doing and also taking the notes parallelly. And once the session is done, I just need to just chat for them 10 minutes, like analyzing the result, discussing what are the observations. It was much easier. So all the team members, or most of the team members and decision makers, have a shared understanding, understand the problem, and it was very easy to influence the team to work on and fix that issue, rather than I again have to try to convince them and explain this is the problem, this is what I observed. That creates a better shared understanding with the team. And there's a great analogy from Jeff Patton where if you don't have the shared understanding, each team member will have a different impression about what this task is about and why it's important. I think once we start to be participating in the pair programming session, and you start to realize what the end user is trying to get it done. As a result, at the end, we all have a common shared understanding, and we know what to fix on, and we need less discussion later, and we need less approval, less arguments, so we can ship things faster with a shared understanding. Yeah.
Sorry to jump in there, Anil. I think that was a great summary. We've gone over time, unfortunately, so we're going to have to wrap it up. Do you need another 30 seconds or so?
Yeah, I think I'm nearly at the end. So thank you for reminding. So I'm nearly at the end. So all I can refer you is 2 books really helped me to shape up my usability testing session. Is Steve Crook's Don't Make Me Think and the Mom Test. Highly recommend that. Yeah, thank you very much. I think that's pretty much it. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. That was really interesting. And it's always good to look at the customer being the developer as well. It's not just always the end customer of it. I do have a question of more around kind of how does the pairing work, and how is it different from shadowing somebody? But we don't have time to jump into it at the moment. So I'm going to post that question on our Slack channel. And if anybody has any questions as well, I can see there's people in Dublin, people in Valencia, people in Berlin. If you have any questions that you want to send through, just post them there and I'll pass them through onto the Slack channel. But that's all we have time for today. So thank you very much, Anil, and thank you for sharing your insights about pair programming.
Thank you.
So now up next, we have Liam O'Connor, who will be sharing his stories about traveling with your users using diary studies. So welcome, Liam.
Fantastic. Thanks, Rory. It was really interesting to see Anil's research skills there as a product marketing manager and a developer. I love the democratization of research, so keep it up. Good stuff. Okay, so we're going to take a look at traveling with your users using diary studies. This is a case study at Deem. We'll find out a little bit about Deem in a moment, where we delved deeply to understand the in-context kind of findings from our users using the diary study format. So let's take a look at, I have to, yeah, okay. Just struggling with the tools there. So this is what we're going to take a look at. We're going to examine the research question, how it came about. We're going to take a moment to step into the step into the shoes of our users who are corporate travelers returning to travel post-pandemic. So we'll try to get ourselves in that headspace. We'll take a look at some of the artifacts that came out of the study, some of the outcomes, and some future research. We'll take a step back to the users. We'll understand some of the challenges that they encountered in their destinations after they had completed their trip and they were at their travel destination. And then we'll kind of summarize and wrap up, and there'll probably be some time for questions at the end, I hope. Okay, so let's move forward. This is me, an updated photo. Rory had an old one there when I looked much younger. Some contacts in case you want to connect or ask any further questions afterwards. Just a little bit about me. Very much focus on the qualitative research, but quant is super important as an approach to triangulate data so that you understand your users in as much detail as possible. So we cover that. We have two core cohorts, like at a high level at Deem. We've got the customers, so the buyers of the platform, the B2B platform, and the end users, and they have very different needs and goals and issues that we need to attend to. Buyers, for example, are more interested in tracking, reporting, and rules within the system, and end users want to successfully complete their task, which is, in this case, purchasing tickets for traveling. We'll cover that in a moment. I myself generally am extremely interested in the strategic part of research. So Anil talked about the user side, really the developers in his case were the users, super important, this tactical stuff, and we cover a lot of that. But also I like to help product teams and leadership teams understand where the product is going, how to anticipate that, and where the kind of business decisions should move in the future. And of course, we're building a research team at Deem. This is super important stuff that I really, really enjoy doing. Oh yeah, I have to. Okay, so Deem. Nope, I skipped ahead. Just because I'm trying to go back. It's important to understand the context of the diary study. Our travelers are corporate travelers. It's not loading that slide. And now it's gone back one more. Here we go. So Deem makes this ETA tool. It's a corporate booking tool where a customer will give this to their employees to book flights, hotels, and cars when they're traveling. And this ensures that the end users, those travelers, their employees, are booking within the rules, not buying extremely expensive flights. And it also helps with tracking, reporting, cost centers, etc. So this is a screen mock-up of a really nice app. And I must say our design is cutting edge in the corporate travel space. We really pushed the design element quite hard. And we have a really, really excellent design team, which covers quite a few different countries, predominantly US, India, Ireland, and Poland. So let's continue. Let's find out more about this research project. And we saw a preview of this slide earlier. So this is the research question. So how are COVID restrictions affecting the experiences of our users while they're traveling? So this is last year, right? There was a lot of return to travel last year, return to corporate travel after quite a break. We already knew a lot about our users, these travelers, from previous research, from interviews, from surveys, from customer feedback. So we have many channels to gather this information, and we already knew how they use our tool and how the experience of traveling was for them. What were the key pain points and what were the kind of delighters for them. Now, as a booking tool where you get your tickets, we don't have a huge influence on the actual experience of traveling. That's more the airlines and the airports and the Ubers and the hotel. But these are our end users, and we're very interested in how the experience goes for them. If we could do anything to improve their experience while they were traveling, then this is an opportunity to kind of delight that user. Maybe there were opportunities. So we really wanted to delve deeper into this in travel experience context. And this was a unique time. People had been stopped from traveling for 2 years in the middle of a pandemic, and now they're coming back to travel while the pandemic is over, let's say, some people thought. Okay, so let's take a deeper look at this with the methods when it loads. So the methods were a diary study, meaning that we followed the travelers in the process of their traveling. We were traveling with the travelers. That's the title of the case study, and we were aiming to gather. I'm not sure if you can see the slide. It still says it's. Oh, okay. Rory tells me it's loading. Great. So we really aimed to gather rich data here. This is data from self-recorded videos, using your phone. In context, you can imagine a traveler going through an airport, passing security, and then they have a task, which is to record a 1 to 3 minute video of the task of going through security. We also used surveys, and there were debriefing interviews as well in this project. So like a lot of really rich and really fantastic data. And what's really cool about the diary study format is that you can get a lot of unexpected data. So when Anil was talking, they had like really, really strict research goals. They were focused on the developer portal. But in this case, you could ask your traveler to record a 3-minute video on something related to their traveling task. And they could record anything. It could be about the Uber. It could be about buying dinner at their connecting airport. And this is what's important to them. So this is kind of travel, like user participant driven research goals. So you can get some stuff that's not directly related to your own research goals, but then you can get some absolute gold. So we got a lot of it, all of it, gold and not interesting stuff. So what else? This was a proof of concept, this diary study format at Deem. We hadn't run one up to that point. And we decided to go in without onboarding any new tools. We just wanted to use what we had. So we used, your spreadsheets and your surveys, and Zoom for the debriefing. And I think this, like, for me, it showed me that you don't need a big team. You think when I thought of diary studies before, it was like, oh, enterprise level research teams of 15 people, access to all the tools they want. But that's not the case. We had a lead research and support when needed. There was not a huge team, and we didn't onboard any new dedicated tools for this. So we just used what we had. Organization and preparation were key. And these are key research skills anyway. If you're interested in research and you've done a bit of research like Anil, organization and preparation before you actually start your project is super important. So some of the goals that we had were data triangulation. So I mentioned that we had a lot of information already. So we wanted to add to this information. We wanted to kind of prove or disprove some of the hypotheses that we had around the experience of traveling for corporate users, especially around the time of return after the COVID pandemic. And the traveler sentiment was a really, really, really important goal. Did I say really 3 times? Travel is a really emotional kind of experience. Probably everyone listening has had the experience of like a delayed flight or a canceled flight. This is the bad experience, but also the really happy experience of going on vacation, a trip, your first trip to like New York City, when you're really excited and you're about it and you're looking forward to it. So the emotional side for corporate travelers, how does that affect how they work, how they deal with the solutions, how they use our product, and what kind of opportunities are there for us to help support them there? So the emotional side and the traveler sentiment was really important. Okay, so let's try to step into the shoes of our users around this time. So you're planning a work trip. it's 2022, it's spring 2022, so like it's March or April. Lockdowns are being lifted in some places, but not others. And this might seem like, the far distant past, but only recently countries like China and Japan have been lifting complete restrictions. In Germany, there was a mask mandate on public transport until recently. So like very recently, a few weeks ago. So some of these things aren't completely in the distant past, and some of them are still kind of with us. So why were you traveling? Why were you traveling when COVID was around and lockdowns were happening? Well, maybe you had a team workshop that you wanted to attend. This was one of the great benefits. If there was one benefit that came out of the pandemic, it was the flexibility around working styles for us office workers, hybrid or fully remote, but you still want to connect with those people. People connection is one of the key elements in corporate travel. You go to meet people. So this was a really big driving force. Sales teams, any salespeople that I speak to, they like use Zoom as a tool, but they say they hate it. They can't wait to get back and meet their client, sit down, have dinner with them, and agree a contract. So yeah, these are some of the reasons why you're doing it. But how do you feel about the trip? Well, with the COVID lockdowns, most definitely anxious, but returning to travel after 2 years, definitely excited. And probably like an overlap with the two. You definitely want to get out of your house. You've been working there for 2 years at home with your kids, also locked down from school, time to travel. So yeah, this was a bit of a crazy time. And when you're returning to this state, there's a lot of preparation to do. I think we can take a look at some of the preparation that the users went through. Yeah, I'm going to assume it's loaded. It's not loaded on my screen. So there was a lot of preparation and planning. Oh, that's because there's a different slide. I'm not sure what slide you're looking at because it didn't load on my screen. I think it's the one about the traveler sentiment. Okay, thanks, Rory. So this was some of the reactions to this planning. So we have a participant here. This is just a short quote from them. They're doing their preparation and their planning, and they're wondering about the restrictions in the destination, which is Nashville, wondering if there's a big COVID outbreak. And she really encapsulates the feeling of a lot of participants here. At the end, I'm really excited about this traveling, but nervous as well. She's just not sure anymore. So this is how a lot of those workers who hadn't traveled for a long time were feeling back in this time last year. Okay, the next slide is probably the preparation slide. Yeah, here we go. So you've planned and you've prepared, but there is a lot of uncertainty. So if you cast your mind back to this time again, when some of the rules were lifting and some of them weren't, each airline had their own rules. Each airport had their own rules. A lot of our travelers are in the United States. Each state had its own rules. Some states were more strict about the rules and others were less strict. If you were traveling internationally, you had to have your vaccine certification to get into the country. You had to understand where to get a rapid COVID test in order to leave the country, to get on the plane. And then you had like Uber and public transport restrictions, different again in each city. There was a lot of preparation to do. And this was before you'd even, left, before you'd stepped out of your front door to go on your trip. That's the preparation up front that we know a lot about already. That a lot of that preparation with the COVID restrictions was new, but the preparation, that's part of the experience for our users before they buy their tickets. But then when you step outside your front door, it's kind of typically where after you've bought your tickets, that's the end of the journey. But there's so much uncertainty left. You're going to the airport and you're at the mercy of these restrictions and the organization at the airport and airlines, and the worries that if you had a worried traveler that was normally anxious about COVID, then these fears become heightened in such situations, and they can become overwhelming. Are you like nervous about the number of people who are going to be wearing masks at the airport or on the plane? So these are a lot of the things that we were getting back in some of the diary entries. Before they started traveling, there was a lot of nervousness around. Let's see how some of them handled these anxious times. Okay, so there should be another traveler sentiment slide for you. And this is about the security lines, right? So this was a traveler going through Atlanta, a really, really busy airport in the United States. And this TSA pre-comment, TSA pre-check, the TSA means Transport Security Authority in the United States. They handle all of the security check-in through the airports. And this traveler, as is very common with corporate travelers, had a pre-clearance where you register online and you go through a special queue. So I have an audio clip there, but it's not working at the moment. And she basically gives a little bit of extra context where she had left her meeting. This was her return flight. She had left her meeting a little bit earlier, wrapped things up, felt a little bit of stress, but the stress level was totally normal. It was on par with what she expected. And then she got to the airport and the stress levels, went straight up almost vertically, because this is the horrendous thing that she didn't expect. She was expecting a special advantage with her pre-clearance, but she didn't get it. Okay, so we've taken a look at some quotes, at some of the preparation and the traveling issues that some of the participants encountered. Let's take a look at what we did with all of that data, all of that rich qualitative data. Okay, so here we have just an example of an emotional journey map. So it's quite obviously a journey map. We added some emotional elements to it. This is like a proto version, an early one that we used. And it's kind of, we're using this to help the stakeholders, the product managers, the designers, and the engineers to understand the journey and understand where the sticking points are, where the rise in emotions is as they achieve some like cool milestone, getting out of the airport, for example, or where the fall is as they, in this case, get an Uber ride, which they were very, very upset with. Let's just take a moment to take a look at this quote. Again, I had a video, but I changed it at the last moment. So she had a really heavy bag and the driver didn't help her to take it in. And she didn't like the smell of the car and she didn't feel safe in the car at all. Now, this isn't, this is Uber's responsibility, but these are our travelers, as I mentioned before. How can we help them in the future? What are the opportunities for Deem to make sure that the journey from end to end, from booking to return home, is as good as possible and remove some of these sticking points? So this is kind of what we're using this this journey map for. We also use a lot of those clips that that I showed you, like no, I didn't show you because the audio doesn't work, but we use the video clips and audio clips to really put the user in the room with the stakeholder. And Neil talked about bringing his stakeholders into the interviews. Such a great technique. If you ever get the chance to bring your stakeholders into the room, it like works a treat. They watch people struggle with your system or having a delightful time with your system. Hopefully that would be the case. In this case, when you've got a lot of, well, these are diary studies, so you can't really bring them into the interview. So you bring the clips into the kind of research readout. And this helps the team to pinpoint where they're going to exploit opportunities for the product. Okay, so future research, right? So you might be thinking, yeah, this is all well and good for travelers, like it's an intense multi-day experience. That's why you're using the diary studies. But like the uncertainty of travel certainly hasn't gone away. We'll be using diary studies again, but uncertainty is like it's kind of constant in the modern world. Every generation believes that theirs is the most uncertain time, that their time is the end of days. And we see this in things like the news reports of impending economic slowdowns, in the tech companies laying off lots of workers, and there's even a war in Europe, right? So there's a lot of uncertainty in the world, and the diary study format, I'm going to get to the point here. The diary study format allows you to delve into those people, those participants, those users, your user base, the people who use your product, delve into the emotional aspect of the uncertainty. If that's where you think you can help them, then you can really like drill in a lot of detail. You know, if it's a banking app that you're working on, money is super emotive. They definitely have some strong opinions about that. E-commerce, even when you're buying your next product, new pair of trainers or a big TV, this is like you've got a lot of anticipation there for the joy that you're going to feel when you get your new product. And the diary study element can really help with that, as after they've taken the final action and they're waiting for the product to arrive, for example. Okay, let's have a look at the time. A few minutes left. So we have done a lot of work as a user. Let's take a step back into the user's shoes. Let's try them on and see if they fit. We've traveled through the airport. We've taken our masks. We've got our COVID documentation. Let's see how it is at the destination when you actually get where you're going. So in this slide, which I hope you're seeing, there's these lovely spring flowers, because it was spring, and the relief was palpable in the entries, in the diary entries that the participants gave us. They really, really were super pleased to be out of the airport, to be at their destination. It was just like old times. Airport transfers were easy. They were at the hotels. And then the juxtaposition, this flower with the challenges, then the challenges, they started to encounter them. They started to encounter max capacity of 50% at office locations. Maybe they were expecting it, maybe they weren't. Office buildings that required vaccination certificates and COVID testing every other day. Like lots and lots of challenges for the participants. But again, the joy, right? I mentioned earlier the people connection in corporate travel, the joy of meeting your colleagues, the joy of having a joke and a laugh and gossip at the coffee machine. These all came through really, really clearly in the diary study project. Okay, so I think we've got one more sentiment slide. Oh, that one's kind of dark. Yeah, the world was temporarily closed, and this was a participant who had to take those tests every other day. So let's skip on through this one, and we'll see. We had a couple of findings. So these are like broad strokes, the kind of high-level categories of hybrid and remote work leading to new travel needs, and also a whole bunch of other things inside of that bucket. We looked at the excitement and anxiety of returning to travel. We didn't talk about the staffing issues, but this was another one of those challenges that kind of came in during the return to travel after the pandemic. Let's just skip right to the last slide, which is actually just the next one. And I'm going to give you a little ode to diary studies. They are so awesome. They're easy to do with the tools that you have. You don't need any new tools. You get a lot of rich, in-context, qualitative data. We used it kind of as a standalone piece, but mixed it with other information, other data we had already. And we like really, really loved those unexpected findings that we got. I highly encourage anyone who has a little bit of interest in research. Anil, maybe you're going to try a diary study next. Let me know if you need any tips with the organization and the preparation. I'm going to write a blog post on it, on that particular organization of that one. You can check it out on the Deem blog right this way. Okay, that's me. Any time for questions?
Yeah, thank you very much. That was really interesting. I love the kind of the richness of the feelings, the emotions that you can kind of convey there. It's more than just oh, this is kind of what people have said. So by sharing that to your stakeholders, that sounds really powerful.
Certainly was.
Yeah, if anybody has any questions, please do write them in. We might not get to them, but we always can move them onto the Slack channel. I do have one question, because you mentioned it at the start, but I didn't really gather how you got through it. So you said, oh, I think this is for big corporates. How did you manage your time of combing through all the data, even though, like you were saying, it wasn't that difficult to set it up, but the vastness of the data and combing through it to pull out the insights?
Yeah, it's a great question. We had a couple of ways of gathering the data. So we used surveys to have structured data. So this was easily handled because the questions were all prepared, and the participant answered that direct question. So you could prepare how you were going to handle that data. As for the qualitative data, well, in this type of research, we have a couple of tools. We use Dovetail, and we kind of import the video in there. It pulls out a transcript automatically, and then you basically just read through it and tag it and code it in a very university academic style way of tagging qualitative data. And this helps you to see the themes that are emerging. So you have to read them a number of times. You have to fix your tags. You have to go back over. You might pull in that other person who's working with you at that time and ask for their support. What do you think about this tagging group? Does it make sense? It's a lot of effort, it's true. But the reward is most definitely there with the richness of the data.
Excellent. And what's your kind of timing? Is this a kind of a continuous thing that you're always just dripping data in, or do you do very much targeted?
So this was quite a long process, because what we had to do is we had to recruit people who were planning a trip. And let's say we recruited them at the start of March, and they fulfilled our recruitment criteria. They might not be traveling until the end of March, or they might be traveling mid-April. So yeah, we had a few people traveling. There were like 17 or 18 people in total. We had a few people traveling each week. So again, the key thing is like do all of the organization and prep up front, all of the communication, create all of the surveys. And then as you go through that time period, in this case, it was probably something like 7 weeks, you just continue to, drip feed in the information. And by the time you get to the end, you've got a good understanding of what the themes are. So yeah, in this case, there were just like a day, let's say, set aside each week to go over the things. It wasn't over the results. It wasn't a huge mammoth task that, you had to sit down and read for weeks and weeks.
Excellent. That sounds really interesting. So yeah, if anybody has any questions, do send them in. But I think that's all we have time for this evening. So thank you very much, Liam.
Thanks very much, Rory. Thanks, everyone.
Excellent. So that brings us to the end for this evening. But if you did enjoy the talks, and I truly enjoyed them, I hope you will come to join us at our upcoming conference, which our next one is in the USA in May in New York, where we'll have 25 speakers. There'll be 8 workshops, up to 800 attendees. It's going to be a fantastic event. So if you are interested and you want to get that kind of real live experience now that, as Liam said, COVID's behind us, I'm not 100% sure it's fully behind us, but it doesn't seem to be as severe as it used to be. So please do join us there, and thank you very much. And otherwise, I will see you at our next UXDX online event. Thank you very much.